Hi, everyone. This is Stephanie Mann, and this is the Safe Kids Now show. And I'm so happy to welcome Juanita Headley. And she is a New York attorney and the founder and CEO of Changing Cases, an organization that aims to eradicate homelessness and sexual exploitation. Did I say that right? Anyway, she is a specialist in this field, and she has been close to it for a decade and volunteer survivor of many committees here in, worldwide, let's say that. Anyway, she is also a survivor of child abuse and neglect. So let's welcome Juanita Headley, and hope I didn't mess that up too much for you. But you can straighten that out for me, Juanita. Welcome, and I'm so happy you could join us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Stephanie. It's really an honor and a privilege.
Well, tell me a little bit about your story, because I know you're a survivor of sexual abuse. And can you explain that to us a little bit so we can find out what happened to you and how things changed your life?
Most certainly. What I want to start with is by saying that my mother, who was a teacher, she told me as a child that nobody should ever touch my private parts. Now, this is a really important conversation, and there are parents who don't use the word private parts. They might say cookie, pumpkin, butterfly, banana, or cherry. My mom didn't do that. She told me nobody should touch your private parts, and I understood that clearly. However, when I was 4 years of age, that was when my stepfather first sexually abused me. Now, it began with tickling, and then his hand slipped. Now, I remember we were on holiday in Spain, and we were staying in a guest house. And I told my mother immediately, as she had informed me to do so, that I had been sexually abused by my stepfather. My mother, unfortunately, by her own words, she said to me years later, "I told your stepfather off, and I told you off." What my mother said to me, the words were, "Don't let it happen again." So my theory as an adult is when my mother told me that as a 4-year-old, I then took the responsibility to not let it happen again. And when it continued 6 years on, I never told her because maybe as a 4-year-old, I blamed myself. And that is actually one of the reasons I'm not comfortable tickling, being tickled, or seeing it happen. Not because I believe the person is a perpetrator, but because of what happened to me. And as I said, I was informed, I was told what to do if that happens. I did the right thing. Unfortunately, my mother responded incorrectly, and she did not kick him out. And that allowed him to continue abusing me repeatedly. From the ages of 4 to 10, I was a victim of attempted rape, which means that he tried to rape me, but I would tussle and turn in bed because I was abused in my sleep. And as a result of that, I've suffered from insomnia throughout my entire life. And my therapist told me that I'm hypervigilant. When I sleep, it needs to be completely dark and completely silent. and I have to face away from the door. And she said, that's because you are on hyper alert. By having those conditions, you will know if there's someone coming in your room. But it's interesting, even though she explained that to me, when I sleep, I don't usually lock my bedroom door. When I'm in a hotel, it locks automatically. But when I'm staying with friends, family, whoever, even strangers, I don't lock the door. I shut it, but I don't lock it because I don't have a fear. But I think internally, psychologically, there is a fear, which is why I need to have certain conditions and I cannot face the door. I have to face away from the door so that I feel safe.
Oh my goodness. You know, I'm hearing too many stories of stepfathers or live-in boyfriends that are abusing children. And it is a very sad situation. And mothers, they need to be super vigilant if they're bringing a new man into the family and there are girls and boys, little boys in the family. So I'm so glad that you are able to articulate it and help other people. You know, my mother said to me, no one touches you in an area covered by a bathing suit. So that made it quite visual to me. So I was on the alert for that. But, private parts, we all have private parts. So thank you very much for sharing your story. Now, tell me a little bit about what you're doing today.
Well, at the moment, I'm currently here in New York. I arrived here on July 29 from St. Vincent, where I spent about 11 months there after being locked in to a beautiful Caribbean island, Caribbean country with about 9 islands. So I came here July 29th, and my plan on returning to New York after being away for over a year was to volunteer. I have a heart and a passion for serving the community. In fact, I've traveled the world almost full-time for 10 years, working pro bono. I'm an attorney for New York for 7 years. I have my license, but because I do not have a work permit, I work pro bono. I work for free in nonprofits and charity organizations. At the moment, I've been volunteering with Network Support Services. And what's been amazing about being a part of this organization is I've had 2 opportunities to serve the community in December and January when I did a Socks and Boxes event and a pop-up. In December, it was an event for those who've been formerly incarcerated to provide them with socks and boxes. A lot of support is given often to women, to females, to girls, but quite often we forget about men, especially those who've committed heinous crimes, sexual offenses, crimes against another. And so when a person has done their time, in my opinion, once they've been released and they're back in society, they deserve something as basic as socks and boxes. And so that's the event that I did in December, and then January, a pop-up. My desire, however, is to remain in the United States by the grace of God and to get sponsored in March, which is just around the corner, so that I can work 7 years as a pro bono lawyer, 10 years travel free. That's quite a long time. And so I feel it's about time for me to get a paid income. I don't work illegally. I simply volunteer around the world, but I'm a vegan and I've got an expensive diet. I think I'm deserving of a paid job.
Well, thank you so much for your service and helping other people, because that is, there aren't many people that will do it pro bono. And on behalf of everybody else, thank you so much for doing that. Now, tell us a little bit about where you go from here. What is your plan? Because you have an ambitious plan.
That's right. For me, as I said, first and foremost, my desire, and it's been a desire for at least 10 years, because I did unfortunately fail the New York bar exam on 2 occasions. And so for 10 years, I had this dream of qualifying as an attorney and helping people. I still have that dream. And whilst I was in St. Vincent in June of last year, I was forcibly imprisoned. Now, as a result of my experience, that's what's given me a really greater passion to utilize my lawyer's license. I volunteered around the world for 10 years, and even in New York, I volunteered, but I haven't actively been volunteering as a lawyer, but providing support. That's why I'm back here. I really want to use my lawyer's license. There are a lot of people in prison, falsely imprisoned, or excessive sentences. My immediate desire is to help people and use my lawyer's license and get paid to do that. But in addition, I also am a speaker. I really love speaking on human trafficking and child prevention. I've traveled around the world to 38 countries. I've spoken in maybe about a dozen, but my passion is to educate and empower people on abuse and human trafficking. This is what I want to do. I don't charge for this. I do everything for free because I can't help it. I like to work for free, but I just want to educate people. And my desire is that my message goes far and wide. There are so many people who don't understand the importance of the message that I have to give. As a victim survivor of abuse, and my message about secrets, and my book, Can You Keep a Secret? I want to change the way parents and caregivers, family members of small children, interact with children so that they'll be able to identify if abuse has taken place, prevent it, and give children the tools to safeguard themselves, because perpetrators are not necessarily adults, they might even be their peers. And then the final desire I have, besides speaking, practicing as a lawyer and helping people, I'm a chef. I worked in United Nations when I was around 18 years of age, very young. I worked in United Nations as a chef, and my dream is to open bakeries around the world, hiring the formerly incarcerated. I've had this passion for a decade. In New York, Yonkers, there's a bakery called Greystone, and that bakery hires the formerly incarcerated. I've had my dream for a decade, but it requires money, it requires land, it requires a team of people. This is something that I want to do, and so the book that I've written, I'm using 80% of the proceeds to make these dreams become a reality. And in addition to that, because I believe in supporting survivors, not just perpetrators of these offenses, right, I also want to build safe houses in the Philippines, because it is number one for cyber sex trafficking, which is where girls and boys are sexually abused via webcam over the internet, often by a Western man in Australia, New Zealand, the US, the UK. So my dream is to help victims and survivors of abuse and trafficking. My dream is to empower and employ perpetrators, because once they've come out of prison and they have a criminal record, it's hard for them to get a job. It's hard for them to make an honest living. And in my opinion, the challenges that are presented by not being able to work means it's very easy for them to be lured back into crime or lured into making child porn and selling it on the dark web, or even on some of these websites like Pornhub, where you can sell these things that are not on the dark web and make a decent sum of money. I want to bring an end to exploitation. So by offering a perpetrator of a sexual offense a job, a way to make money, there's no need for him to make money in other unscrupulous ways, I should say.
You know, there are so many unscrupulous ways, but I used to hear about selling drugs for the unscrupulous to make money, but now child pornography or pornography of any sort is all over the internet. And what would you say to parents? And I'm going to take a little break here, but when we come back, what would you tell parents about what's on the internet and how to safeguard your children? So we'll be right back after a 1-minute commercial. So hang on, we'll be there.
Pillow Throw and Tuck. It's handmade by myself, and you only can get it here, and it's patent, and it's only here at Rococo Design. It's like a regular pillow, or you can take the blanket out like so, fluff up the pillow, open up your blanket, wrap it around yourself, and then you can lay on your sofa and relax with your Pillow Throw and Tuck. When you're done with it, just flip it over. When you don't want the blanket anymore, you just fold it over twice. Fold it over twice again. Fold it over. And tuck it in the back. And there you go. You're back to the Pillow Throw and Tuck. Rococo Design.
Do 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 do.
Welcome back. We are speaking today with Juanita Headley, and she is an attorney, and she's also the founder and CEO of Changing Cases. So thank you so much for being with us today, Juanita, and give us some tips or what can we do to protect our kids?
What I'll say when it comes to protecting children, it's about having honest conversations with them.
Yeah.
We have to understand that there's a lot of influence, especially now with the internet. No matter how you may think that your child is being protected at home, the reality is when they go to school, they may be exposed to things. In fact, there are children who are sexting. They are sending nude photographs and text to one another. In fact, there is a magazine that actually encourages young people to sex safely. And so imagine you give your child a magazine that is for their age, it's a teenage magazine, but it discusses sexual activity that they should engage in safely, how they should do that, tips and advice, and the best way to communicate with their boyfriend or girlfriend when it comes to sending naked photographs. I personally discourage everyone that I speak to on this topic from sending nude photographs between yourself and your significant other. It can get into the wrong hands. And in my case, personally, my mother's husband, my mother's remarried, my stepfather, my mom's husband, who's deceased, he actually made a pornographic video with my mother. And then when I was around 15 years of age, he showed me that video. Now, for those who missed earlier, I said I was abused sexually from 4 to 10. And so when I would tell my therapist the abuse stopped, they said it didn't stop, it paused. Because if it stopped, he wouldn't have tried again on 2 separate occasions later. When I was 15, he showed me this video. Now, I watched it for about 30 seconds and I left the room. But now, as an adult, I question what was the motivation behind showing me the video.
Yeah.
I believe it was for grooming purposes. And that is why I discourage people from sending or making these videos and distributing it to others, because that video or photo that you send or that you make with your significant other can be used to groom your child or someone else's. And so that is why we have to be very careful and cautious about the things that we do, even the things that we say. Let's say that a mother says to their son or daughter, do everything your sibling tells you. Do everything your nanny tells you. The difficulty with such a statement is that that sibling or nanny can tell the child to engage sexually, and that's exactly what they will do. So instead, better language is, when your sibling or your nanny tells you to do something, you must follow the instructions unless it involves anything to do with your private parts. Because I've heard so many instances and cases around the world of children being abused by siblings or by the nanny or the childminder. In fact, I know of a young guy who was sexually abused by his male nanny. And as a result of being abused, he was engaging in inappropriate sexual activity in school. And then when he became an adult, he then went on to watch child pornography involving boys and men. So it was, I guess you could say, boy on men pornography. But I believe that's because of the desire that was opened up within him from a young child being abused sexually by a boy. Not every person who's abused is going to go down that route of watching child porn or go down the route of behaving sexually inappropriately, but on occasion that sometimes happens. And on the back of that, you need to be observant of the behaviors your child is exhibiting. If your child is exhibiting sexual behaviors at a very young age when they should be innocent, you need to question that. Too often, parents will chastise their child, maybe beat their child, corporal punishment, when the child is behaving sexualized. That's not what you need to do. You need to ask them, where did you learn that? Who taught you?
Yeah.
In a way that gets the child to open up. And then I also want to say that regardless of the child's age, whether it's a newborn, a toddler, I believe it's important for parents to protect their children by not having them walk around naked in the house, whether it's family, friends, godparents. I've traveled the world for 10 years working pro bono, which means I don't get paid. And so as a result of that lifestyle, I've lived with complete strangers. And I've seen children, young children, teenagers, running around naked. That is not appropriate. Whether I'm female and female, that's not the point. I'm a stranger. And if you're comfortable doing that in front of a stranger, then you're going to do it in front of people who you know a little bit more, who are not like me, who may have a desire or an intention to engage inappropriately with the child. You also need to consider the relationships that your children have with other children and with adults. I've heard stories of children who would sit on a family member's lap or a neighbor's lap, and that person, in fact, one story, that woman specifically in this case, would say, "This is my boyfriend," and kiss the child on the lips. He was under the age of 7. When he would stay at her house whilst the parents were away in the daytime, she would sexually abuse this little boy, and she would get him to engage in things. When I spoke to him, because he's an adult and he confided in me, he said, "I thought she was my girlfriend." He was a child who was groomed. But what you've got to appreciate, the behavior she exhibited publicly, nobody said a thing about that. And so that's the point. It's not about being suspicious. It's about not allowing certain things to happen. Talk to your children, have open conversations, but also read what they're not saying to you. Look at their body language. Think about it. Don't just take what they say at face value. My father asked me when I was around 15 if I'd been sexually abused, and I lied and said no. A lot of people don't understand. Victims and survivors, often we will deny the abuse happened even though it did, even if there is evidence. And far too often, people will judge the victim survivor and say, "It's not true. They were asking for it. They chose that." I was 4. So nobody can sit and say I was asking for that. In fact, a male family member asked me if I was upset when my parents divorced, or my mom and my stepfather. And they even asked me something on the lines of, to imply if I wanted a relationship with my stepfather. That's inappropriate. I was a child. I was abused. I was groomed. I loved him as a stepfather. But we need people to be educated so that they understand this issue, because there's a lot of information that people don't understand, they don't get. There's abuse happening right under their nose, but they don't see it because they're too trusting. And far too often when abuse happens, it's somebody that you know.
You know, that is such important information. I really appreciate your sharing that story. You know, we don't want to be suspicious of everyone, but we do need to educate our kids so that they can take care of themselves better, because we can't always be there for them. So thank you for all that information. What do you think is the most important thing that we can tell our kids today, right now? What should all of us go and talk to our kids about?
I would say grooming. Grooming, I believe, is the most important thing. Why? In my opinion, having traveled the world for 6 years giving a message on abuse and trafficking, far too many victims and survivors were told by their parents, no one should touch your private parts, but they still get abused. Because in my opinion, that is not enough. I was groomed. Grooming is, in my opinion, a type of brainwashing. It is preparation or training. It is so subtle that you don't even realize when you've been abused or raped or sodomized that, whoa, that just happened. And that's the issue. Too many people who judge victim survivor stories, they don't understand the grooming process. Whether it's R. Kelly, Michael Jackson, Weinstein, many of the times when these victim survivors are indeed victim survivors who went through those experiences, they were groomed. Some people say, why didn't she scream? Why didn't she run away? Why did they go back to Michael Jackson's Neverland? Grooming is something that is so tight. It's hard for you to get out of it. It's like a kind of glue, Stockholm syndrome. When you talk to your child about grooming, you're getting them to identify and understand the signs, so that way they're able to see and then communicate to their parent or caregiver what is going on before the abuse is to take place. In my case, it was tickling. My stepfather tickled me. My stepfather gave me candy, special privileges. He let me stay up late at night. He let me watch movies. He gave me alcohol pops. That was grooming. If I knew what grooming was, I'd say, Mom, do you know Tony? He lets me stay up late. Do you know he gives me candy? All the things my mom wouldn't do, he did. If I was to tell her these things, she'd say, wait, this sounds like grooming. We need to do something about this. When I'm not home, you stay at your grandmother's. So grooming, I believe, is what's key. If people don't understand, look online, read stories of victim survivors who talk about the grooming process. So you can explain it to your child, whatever age they're at, in a simple way so that they can identify it and then have the courage to communicate. And one other thing I think is really important, you need to tell your children, if anybody says to you that you will go to prison or mommy or daddy will go to prison because of something they're doing to you, tell me immediately. Because there are children who want to protect their parents, and that's why they never disclose the abuse, because they've been threatened into silence.
You know, that's very important information. And I might add to that, Juanita, that there is on the YouTube channel, there is a video called Groomed, which was made by a young teenage boy working with a mother and her daughter, and it has won some awards. So I would suggest that if people want to know more about grooming, and we should all learn about grooming, go see this film, and it's only 17 minutes long, and it's called Groomed, Groomed, and it's on YouTube. So that might be helpful too. You know, tell me a little bit about your changing cases. I'm not sure I understand what that means. So maybe you can tell me.
Thank you. And I appreciate you asking. Far too often people don't ask what's changing cases. They want to know what I do. Changing cases, it's a name that the Lord gave me. I'm a born-again Christian. And so I believe that the Lord, Jesus, the Holy Spirit spoke to me directly, gave me the name, the logo, everything. I was on a bus from university back in UK. Wow. And on that bus journey, he gave me all of that. The name changing cases, God inspired, but what does it really mean? As a lawyer, I want to bring change into people's lives. When we think about court, we think about court cases, guilty, not guilty, bringing change to those legal cases. I'm a chef, I'm a baker. And so therefore, when we make cakes, we put them into paper cases. The change would be every paper case represents a different flavor, a different type of product. My desire is to bring change into the world. I believe every one of us that there is a calling upon our life, whether we are Christian, non-Christian, we believe in God or not. We all have a purpose on this earth. And I believe, as it says in Genesis 50:20 in the Bible, what the enemy intended for evil, God intended for good. I was a victim of child sexual abuse. Joseph in the Bible was accused of rape, thrown in prison. I was falsely imprisoned. My story is very much like Joseph's. I really identify. What we need to understand is that every one of us will have trials, tribulations, challenges. Even the celebrities with money have hardships. We all go through those, but they don't have to dictate the future. Whether you have a criminal past, it doesn't have to dictate the future. My desire is to allow my story and my experience to bring change into other people's lives. The Bible talks about being a light that is not under a lampstand, being on a sick hill. My desire is to not speak doom and gloom. It's to not create fear and paranoia. It is to educate and to empower and to use my story that was negative to turn it around to something positive, to protect other individuals from being abused, to ensure that this doesn't have to happen again. It continues to happen on a daily basis around the world. But if people can be educated, if they can understand grooming, if they can use the correct terminology for private parts, that means there is a high possibility that child is empowered to protect themselves from a situation, or God forbid they're abused once, it doesn't happen for 6 years or 10 years or 20 years. I believe we can learn from one another, and my desire is to use my story as a learning tool to educate others. My desire is to bring change into the lives of those who are impoverished, those who are homeless, those who are trafficked, and those who are formerly incarcerated. I just like to help people. And I believe that's the calling on my life. Yes, I've had struggles, I've had challenges, I have been persecuted, falsely accused. I've dealt with a lot, but I believe in focusing on the positive by using my story to be a blessing to others so that they don't have to go through those very same things, or if they do, they're inspired that just as my life can be turned around from negative to good, their life can do the very same thing too.
Well, you certainly are an inspiration to all of us, and you have been just a guiding light and a bright light for all of us, because we need to hear what your message is, and you deliver it so well. I am so appreciative of your being able to share this information with us. Do you have a final thought for us today?
Thank you
Anything
very
you'd
much.
like to add?
Certainly, just my book, which is available on Amazon.
Okay, good.
You can see it here, Can You Keep a Secret? As I mentioned earlier in the show, 80% of the proceeds will be used for charity, safe houses, the Indonesian men in Java who climb up the volcano and don't have masks, so die from respiratory issues, commissary for those individuals in prison who don't have money to buy toilet paper and their needs. And as a born-again Christian, I type 10%. I like to help. When you buy my book, 80% of the proceeds is going to a good cause, but beyond that, you're going to be educated, empowered, and inspired. And my desire is that you are able to safeguard the children in your world. Every one of us has a responsibility. We don't need to go through the hardships, through the fiery furnace when someone else has been there. So I want to encourage you, please do get a copy of my book. In addition to that, I'm a speaker. This is my passion. I love to share on the topic of abuse and trafficking. I speak everywhere around the world, completely free of charge. I do not charge for what I do. I take donations, of course, but I just want to educate. So if you know of places I can share my message, if I can present, if I can be interviewed, any opportunity to educate and empower anywhere, whether that's in person or via Zoom, please reach out to me on my website, which is changingcases.org, changingcases.org. So please do reach out to me, share your story, tell me your secret, and of course, get a copy of my book so that you're not only educated and empowered, but you are changing lives of victims and survivors around the world who have been trafficked, and giving a second chance to those who have been incarcerated and released. And then finally, if you're a praying person, please pray for me. My desire is to be in the United States so that I can work and make a bigger difference to those who need legal representation. Thank you so much for having me, Stephanie.
Well, you are making a difference, and you've made a difference in all of us by listening to your message. And I just want to thank you so much, Juanita, for sharing your story with us today, and advise our listeners to get a copy of your book, Can You Keep a Secret? Show the cover one more time.
Certainly. This is my book, Can You Keep a Secret? Available on Amazon.
On Amazon. So thank you so much for joining us today. Okay, I just want to mention that we have a guest next week that is an amazing man. His name is Jeffrey Cabe, and Jeffrey is a health life specialist, and he is going to talk about mental health, which is a big topic today. And we all need some advice and some help on how to stay safe and healthy. So join us next week. Blessings to you all, and peace.
You're listening to All About Us Radio. We're live streaming 24/7, playing old school versus new school. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at AAU Media, and visit our website, www.aaumedia.com. Call us at 1-833-369-1444, extension 1, and leave us an inspirational message or request. You're listening to All About Us Radio.